American hegemony is coming to an end, it seems. What will the new world be like? People walk along the street near the Capitol building, Washington. This is by Stringer on Real Novosti. David Narmania. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken gave everyone the shocking news the other day that the world cannot exist without American leadership. Quote, "From our point of view, this is a dispute about the shape of what comes after the next post-Cold War period. What values will be reflected? We have a simple choice. The world does not organize itself. For the U.S., the choice is this. If we don't organize, if we don't take the leadership role, that means one of two things. That role will be taken over by someone else, perhaps China, not in a way that is fully aligned with our interests and values, or better yet, no one will take it up, so there will be a vacuum that bad things can fill before good things." End quote. This is what he said at a speech at Stanford University. There is so much arrogance, self-confidence, and snobbery in these words that it's difficult to decide which of the mistakes of the head of American diplomacy to begin with. The world was organized before the rise of the United States as a nation, will continue to do so after its fall, not to mention quietly survive the weakening of Washington. Moreover, the U.S. is much more of an obstacle to this self-regulation process than a help. 3 decades of American domination of the planet did not bring peace, tranquility, and prosperity to its other inhabitants. The wars in Yugoslavia, Iraq, and Afghanistan convincingly proved the first point. The Arab Spring and the color revolutions the second point. And the global financial crises and looming problems in the U.S. stock market, the energy crisis, and the impending global recession is the third point. Also, the idea of a leader in the world order being built before our eyes is deeply mistaken. Washington can no longer shoulder that burden. China certainly cannot, and is not even burning with a desire to do this. Even maintaining this regime requires a huge expenditure of resources that is fraught with protracted crises, not to mention the struggle for leadership itself. Far more enticing for major players on the international stage will be the role of regional power centers. The reason is that global leadership entails global threats to a country with such a status, while regional supremacy is largely due to protecting the existential interests of major players. Another point in Blinken's speech that raises questions is the value extraction thesis. The quote-unquote bad things that the U.S. Secretary of State speaks of have gained momentum largely because of Washington's efforts to impose its notions of right and wrong on nations that do not accept them. The aforementioned Arab Spring is a vivid example of this. The revolutions made by fervent supporters of democracy who invited their like-minded people to Tahrir Square via Facebook, brought to power the absolute opposites. Take, for example, Egypt, where after the departure of Hosni Mubarak, the Muslim Brotherhood, led by Mohamed Morsi, came to power. In Russia, as in many other countries, this organization is recognized as a terrorist organization. Only the army was able to wrest the reins from them. Or consider the countries in which the Americans have most actively helped build democracy: Syria, Iraq, Libya. The former is still in civil war. The latter has provided fertile ground for the rise of the Islamic State, one of the most powerful terrorist organizations in history. And the latter has yet to find a convincing answer to the question of whether it will remain a united country. And note that we're talking about all this exclusively in terms of, quote, reinforcing American values, end quote, based on the sincerity of the intentions of the U.S. in general and Blinken in particular, when they talk about trying to conquer democracy around the world. These examples not only make it clear that the idea is unrealistic, they also show that it is just a pretext for using the importers of their own rather petty interests. So this American approach is slowly coming to an end. Ambitious regional powers are raising their heads and not only openly declaring their interests, but also finding ways to defend them shaping the image of the global future. After the humiliating news for the US OPEC plus countries cutting oil production, it became known that Saudi Arabia intends to join BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Similar plans were previously announced by Argentina and Iran, Riyadh's longtime rival, and thus the Union turns into a platform for solving many regional problems and coordinating on issues of global importance. Of course, it cannot be compared to NATO in terms of closeness of ties. Only French President Emmanuel Macron was talking about the alliance's death even before the crisis in Ukraine, and it's unlikely that the actions of his partners have convinced him otherwise. It's quite difficult to look like a strong alliance when one of the most important ones of its members, Turkey, is on the brink of war with another NATO member, Greece, and the bloc itself has not been able to agree on the admission of 2 new members for nearly 6 months. All this suggests that the future will be a world of platforms rather than a world of alliances. Such a format is simply more convenient for participants. Their interests may not always coincide, but they will always be taken into account. And Russia could become one of the main architects of this world, but to do that, they have to win. And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.